Hey, folks, give me a minute and let's talk a little bit about the Russians who aren't really Russian. Today, we're going to look at the Komi region and the Komi people. And the Komi people had a long history and tradition of their own language, their own culture, going back for millennia, living there just north of Moscow, really, northwest of Moscow. Now, the Russian influence in the Komi region begins around 1360, so the mid 14th century. That's when this guy, Stephen of Perm, the Bishop of Perm, went to Komi to baptize the Komi people and convert them to Christianity. And he led his evangelicals there for the next 30 years up until his death in 1396. After which we see an increase in Russian troops coming into the area, more Christianization of the area, the standard kind of expansion that you see over indigenous peoples again and again through history. And St. Stephen led this particular charge. Now, the question becomes, of course, what drew the Russians there? Well, if today we have an oil economy, back in those days, we had a fur trading economy. Just like Hudson, going up the Hudson to find furs. We see that the Russians wanted to expand into the Komi people's territory because it was a country rich in furs and timber and other natural resources that, of course, the Muscovites coveted. And so by 1482, where you have the first real military massacres, where large groups of Russian troops come in and just subjugate the people, this was what they were after. The money, as always. Now, things went along pretty much an uneasy peace, with Moscow ruling from afar, troops in Komi executing people, enforcing a harsh Muscovy rule over the people, until about 1708, when Peter the Great thought that the overall region was too big, the Komi people might grow to be a threat to him, and so he split the region, which had long-lasting, and to this day it's split. The Komi people from one province that were treated in a particular way have a different life and live in a different world than the ones in the other. And so he split those people in 1708. The talk of Komi independence and a Komi independence movement is scattered through history. Over that 400 years, there's lots of skirmishes, there's small revolutions, etc., but nothing ever took hold until the mid-19th century. The Tsar at the time declared that he needed a road built, and so he wanted to conscript a bunch of the population into forced labor to build this road. And the people refused. They said, what do we have to build your road for? And they were told in no uncertain terms that their state existed only to serve Muscovy. And that was a problem for them. Now, like so many of these situations that we see time and time again, the Russians simply sent in the troops, massacred everybody that wouldn't cooperate, and forced everybody else to build the road for them, because that's what they do. Talk of independence then didn't come up again until the Russian Revolution. In 1917, by the 20th of November 1917, 9/10 of the territory of the Komi region was occupied by the whites. This did not last. By Christmas, the Reds had taken 2/3 of it. And so if you think back to your Russian Revolution history, there were the whites who supported the monarch, the Tsar, and there were the Reds, who were the communists. And those were the two big armies in that war. Those are the ones we all studied in school. But what we didn't study was the Green Army. There was a Green Army in the Russian Revolution, and it was the Komi people fighting both the whites and reds. And that's a fight that they would not win. At this time in 1917, 90% of the population here spoke the Komi language. But on August 21st, 1917, the communists declared the... Guys, I apologize. August 21st, 1921. The communists declared the autonomous Komi region. And from then on, the persecution of the Komi language, the replacement by Russian, the legal entrenchment of Russian, stole the history of these people and their language from them, which is what the Russians do everywhere that they conquer. They Russify the area while forcing everybody to abandon their language to speak Russian, while at the same time treating them as second-class citizens. And that gets way worse under Stalin. By 1933, Stalin decides to use the Komi the territory of the Komi people as a gulag, building between 1929 and 1956 17 gulags, where he would then transport prisoners from all over the rest of the USSR, diluting the ethnic Komi population and eliminating its language and culture through the process of Russification. And penal colonies. In the 1930s, when minerals were discovered there, titanium, oil, natural gas, coal, etc., these forced labor camps became the means by which those minerals were extracted and all the wealth sent to Moscow. Little dribbles and drabs go back to the people that own the land that this wealth is extracted from, while Putin sits on a golden toilet in his Sochi palace. But the dream of independence did not die. And in 1992, with the fall of the USSR, what did the Komi people do? They declared their independence from Moscow. They set up a constitution that acknowledged the Komi language as an official language and established the independent free state of the Komi Republic. This would be short-lived. We see it over and over again. The same thing happened with the Tuvans. The same thing happened with the Sakha. The same thing happened with the Irkutis. Who comes into power? This guy right here. And once again, the teaching of the Komi language is outlawed. The Constitution gets rewritten in favor of Moscow. The extraction economy of pulling the natural resources out of there and sending them to Moscow continues unabated. And all the while, the people are repressed by the Moscow regime. But they don't want it. The Ukraine war has sparked a new independence movement inside of the Komi Republic. In the words of one activist, speaking to the Russians, "Go back home. We are waiting for you here. Moscow has never done us any good. We are Komi. We don't need anything there in Ukraine." And of course, as a native local people, the Komi have suffered far more in this war, as their men have been conscripted, their villages emptied, and they've been forced to go to the front to fight. Many have defected. Many have joined the Siberian Brigade here in Ukraine and are waiting for their chance to go home and fight. And to them we say, huzzah.